Yo, what's good? This is JVB representing SPD and that's sportsperdium.com. It's official. The Chicago Bears defeat the Minnesota Vikings at home at Soldier Field 16-6. And probably the biggest news coming out of the game, Mitch Trubisky gets injured on the very first drive of the game. He's trying to scramble out. He falls awkwardly on his arm. He messed his shoulder up. He left the game. He was out immediately. Like you saw it. As soon as he hit the ground, he was in obvious pain. He immediately got up and he went straight to the sideline. He went under the tent. Then he went right to the locker room where eventually said that Mitch Trubisky was out of the game. He was not coming back to the game. So next one up, Chase Daniel. And Chase Daniel took over for Mitch Trubisky. They were driving the ball pretty good against Minnesota with Mitch Trubisky, and that just continued on that drive. You know, Chase Daniel comes in. Of course, he's a veteran over 10 years, like 11 years, and he played comparable. I mean, he played better than comparable. For what the Bears needed, he did a really good job taking over this Bears offense and leading them to the first touchdown of the game to Tariq Cohen. And then a couple of other times in the game, he was able to drive the ball down the field, get the Bears in the red zone. They didn't capitalize in the red zone. You know, shout out to Minnesota's defense on that. So they didn't capitalize on touchdowns, but they did convert on 3 field goals from Eddie Pinheiro. And that was enough to defeat the Minnesota Vikings, who had a rude awakening by the best defense in the National Football League, the Chicago Bears, at home once again after that Week 1 debacle on opening night. They were going to make sure, regardless of who the quarterback was, Mitch Trubisky, Chase Daniel, Matt Nagy, it didn't matter who the quarterback was. The Bears defense was coming in, trying to make a statement in the NFC North against a rival in the Minnesota Vikings, and they did that. And they also did that shorthanded because they didn't have Akeem Hicks for this game. Of course, they haven't had Bilal Nichols for a couple of weeks now. And at the last minute, Roquan Smith became inactive due to personal reasons. Now, I'm recording this video pretty much after the game, so I'm not sure what the personal reason was, but he didn't suit up. He was on the sideline, but he didn't play, so Nick Kwiatkowski came in, and Nick Kwiatkowski kicked ass. So just like Mitch Trubisky and Chase Daniel, next man up mentality. Roquan Smith didn't play, Nick Kwiatkowski came in, and he balled the fuck out. He had a few good plays on Dalvin Cook. There was one play when Minnesota was trying to throw a screen. They had 2 offensive linemen ready to lead block for Dalvin Cook, but Nick Kwiatkowski split both guys and got the tackle on Dalvin Cook, and that's not easy to do. He's very explosive. We've seen that the first 3 weeks of the season, but the NFL leading rusher didn't do anything the whole game pretty much. He did have a touchdown late, but still the Chicago Bears held him down very, very good. Nick Kwiatkowski had a great game. He also had a couple of plays on Dalvin Cook where Dalvin Cook was supposed to block. You know, the first time my man Dalvin Cook pulled the Olay and Nick Kwiatkowski just went right past him and got a big sack on Kirk Cousins, which led to a big loss, a big fumble loss for the Minnesota Vikings, stalling that drive. And then Kwiatkowski had a play where Dalvin Cook actually engaged with him on the block, but he drove Dalvin Cook into Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins rolls out, and he gets sacked again by Nick Williams, who had a couple of sacks in the game. Another guy, next man up, playing for the injured Akeem Hicks, coming out of the game with 2 sacks. Roy Robertson Harris, this man looks like an NFL version of a monster. This man is big and he's scary. He's very agile. And this is another gem that the Bears got, man. An undrafted guy. The Bears picked this guy up, and this man been working hard. And now this year, you see it's coming into fruition. This man is getting sacks. He had a couple of sacks today. You know, he had the little Ric Flair strut early in the game on his first sack. But Roy Robertson Harris came up big. Nick Williams came up big. Nick Kwiatkowski came up big. And, of course, we have to talk about the man, the myth, the future legend, Khalil motherfucking Mack. Once again showing out. Once again getting a strip sack fumble. This time on Kirk Cousins on Minnesota's very first drive of the second half. setting up the Bears with fantastic field position. Like, what else can you say about this man? And if you look at the stat sheet, you like, dang, he only had a few tackles in the game. But he had 1.5 sacks. He has so many pressures on the quarterback. He creates so much chaos on the defensive side of the ball. And it opens up so much for everybody on the field. And like I said in my Khalil Mack video before the season, he makes everybody better on the defense. And although Aaron Donald has great numbers, he gets a lot of sacks, he does create chaos. For some reason, it just don't percolate with everybody else. And you can't say they don't have talent because the Los Angeles Rams have talent on that defense. We saw it last week against the Cleveland Browns. Like, they have talent. But we also saw in a game today at home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they gave up a fucking 50-piece to Jameis Winston and that Tampa Bay offense. But here in Chicago at Soldier Field, Khalil Mack and company, fantastic game. Fantastic game by the defense. The only knock on the defense today, penalties. Penalty. Especially on that draft, that Minnesota draft, where they were getting down the field basically because the Bears were giving up so many penalty yards. Like, the Bears got the best defense in the league, but when you shoot yourself in the foot with all these stupid penalties, it don't matter how good the defense is. You can get hurt from that, and that's no good. You know, especially on that play with Eddie Jackson. 3rd and 16, you got Minnesota backed up, incomplete pass, and then Eddie Jackson commits a stupid personal foul. What are you doing? That's a stupid play. And fortunately for the Bears, the Vikings didn't get to capitalize on that. But if you keep doing shit like that throughout the season, more times than not, it will hurt you. But the Bears got away with that. The Bears' defense was great, even shorthanded, without Akeem Hicks, without Bilal Nichols, without Roquan Smith. They held Dalvin Cook in check. They held the receivers in check for the most part, even though Stephon Diggs did have over 100 yards receiving. They did a great job. And the team as a whole did a great job. Offense, defense, and special teams all showed up today. You know, the running game wasn't great today, but I do like them feeding David Montgomery because he is the most talented guy between him and Mike Davis. Running with the ball, receiving the ball. We've seen a little bit of that today with David Montgomery. Again, nothing crazy, nothing spectacular. Played against a great defense in Minnesota. But it was a solid effort by this offense. Shout out to Chase Daniel coming in, taking over from Mitch Trubisky, completing that drive with a touchdown when Mitch Trubisky got out the game. Then made a lot of plus plays throughout the game. You know, Allen Robinson had a really good game. I don't know what the hell happened to Xavier Rhodes, but he's definitely not the cornerback he was 2 years ago. Javon Wims, in the absence of Taylor Gabriel, showing, hey, I can play too. But Javon Wims had a good game, and it shows you how good this Bears receiving core is. Like, you know, Allen Robinson is a very talented wide receiver. He's pretty good, right? But besides that, if you look at the guys in the receiving core, you may think none of these guys are special. You know, everybody's pretty good, solid, but nobody's special. But what I'm saying is that Taylor Gabriel, the Monday night hero against the Washington Redskins with 3 touchdowns. He gets a concussion in that game against Washington. He doesn't play in this game, but for 1 second, and this is no disrespect to Taylor Gabriel, but for 1 second, were you nervous? Was you, the Bears fan, nervous that Taylor Gabriel was going to be out of the game, that he was going to miss this game, and Javon Wims was going to take his place? No. And like I said, that's no disrespect to Taylor Gabriel, but the Bears have talent. These wide receivers are very talented. And you didn't even see Riley Ridley today. But they have some talented guys on the offensive side of the ball. But in this type of offense, no one guy's going to always shine. Every week, there's going to be probably another guy who has a big game. You know, more often than not, Allen Robinson is going to be leading the charge, but after him, you never know who it's going to be. It can be Taylor Gabriel. It could be Anthony Miller. It could be Javon Wims. It can be Trey Burton. Hell, it might even be Cordero Patterson. Like, you never know who the guy is going to be, but they are pretty talented wide receivers, and Javon Williams showed up today. Like I said earlier about Mitch and Chase Daniel coming in for him. Like I said earlier about Akeem Hicks and Nick Williams coming in for him. Like I said earlier about Roquan Smith and Nick Kwiatkowski coming in for him. Next man up. That next man up mentality is something that this Bears team have. And that in itself is special. It's great to see that you can lose a very valuable starter in someone like Akeem Hicks, but there's a man behind him in a depth chart that you probably never heard of. But there's a guy behind him in Nick Williams who comes in and he gets a couple of sacks in the game. If you're going to be a good team in this league, you need shit like that. Yes, it's great to have some elite players on your team. If you have a whole bunch of plus players on your team, you're going to turn out pretty damn good at the end of the season. Of course, you don't want guys to be dropping like flies throughout the season and shit. You want your team to be relatively healthy throughout the season, especially towards the end of the season going into the playoffs. But it's great to see that the Bears have this depth. It's great to see a guy like Chase Daniel come in. And it's not like he's taking first-team reps throughout the week, you know. He didn't know this shit was going to happen, but he's a veteran. He's been in the league for 11 years, mostly in New Orleans behind a Hall of Fame quarterback in Drew Brees, and that helps you. Being around these offensive minds like Andy Reid and Sean Payton, being around that helps you. So when he comes into the game, when Mitch gets hurt, and I like Mitch Trubisky and I'm believing Mitch Trubisky, but I will say when he came in, it wasn't much of a drop-off from what you may have saw throughout the rest of that game. Now, Mitch Trubisky is the more athletic, more spectacular playmaking quarterback. That's facts. Like, we know he's talented, but we also know there's a backup quarterback who's not great. He's not going to be coming in and lighting up defenses all the time, but he is a solid quarterback in Chase Daniel. Now, the question is, well, a couple of questions. A, how severe is this shoulder injury and how long will he be out? And B, depending on how long he's out, can Chase Daniel effectively lead the way and be a solid quarterback with this great defense for as long as Trubisky is going to be out? That's the question. We had this same exact situation last year. Now, the Bears went 1-1 with Chase Daniel. That first game against Detroit, Chase Daniel looked really good on Thanksgiving. The Bears defense helped him out. They made plays. They had a defensive touchdown in that game, but he played well. The following game, though, it was a rainy, ugly-ass game against the New York Giants. He fumbled the ball like 17 times. They still had a chance to win the game, but they ended up losing that game in overtime. You know, the conditions were bad, but Chase Daniel was not good at all. But the question is now, how long will he be out this time with the shoulder injury? Now, the Bears have the long flight to London this week coming up against the Oakland Raiders. If the Bears can pull off the victory, the Bears will be 4-1 going into the bye week. So that's going to give Mitch Trubisky 2 weeks to recover. Now, I don't know the severity of the injury. As far as I know, it can be bad. I'm just going by what I saw last year with him missing 2 games due to the shoulder injury. But however long it is, Bears fans, how do you feel? Do you believe in Chase Daniel no matter how long Mitch Trubisky is out? Do you believe Chase Daniel, with this great defense behind him and some talented guys on the offensive side of the ball, do you believe that's good enough to get by until Mitch Trubisky is healthy enough to play? Now, in my opinion, I think he'll be solid. I think he can be solid. Real talk, for the most part, that's all you're going to need. Just be solid because you have the best defense in the National Football League behind you. So, yes, if Chase Daniel is, wait a minute, let me say it, a game manager at quarterback with this defense, the Bears should be competitive in every single game, period. But with that said, I hope the news is positive in regards to Mitch Trubisky and this injury. But regardless of what happens, this defense ain't going nowhere. As long as this defense stays relatively healthy, especially number 52, This defense is going to be a force every single week against every single offense in the National Football League. But as far as today, Chase Daniel and this great defense got the job done, defeating the Minnesota Vikings 16-6 in a big division game. You always want to take care of these division games, man. You always want to do well in the division. And it was a positive all around this week because not only do you defeat Minnesota, who's in your division, but the Detroit Lions lost to the Chiefs. And, of course, on Thursday night, the Eagles defeated the Green Bay Packers. So everybody in the division lose this week except the Chicago Bears. The Bears win again, 16-6 against the Minnesota Vikings. Next up, London against the Oakland Raiders, a.k.a. the Khalil Mack revenge game. I can't wait to see how he performs playing against his former team for the very first time. But I'm done. Hey, like the video and share the video with fellow Bears fans, fellow football fans, fellow Chicago sports fans. Share with everybody. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, take it easy. God bless. Bear down.